Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 125, where we're going to talk about solution-based marketing. Now, what is that? Sounds like a bit of a corporate, cheesy term, maybe. But the reason I wanted to focus on this and kind of this idea and this topic is because we've been talking a lot about sales strategies and getting clients recently. In fact, the previous episode to this one was about targeted sales strategies for web designers and web design agency owners. One thing we really haven't got too deep into, though, is the path in which you guide leads into becoming really good clients. And this topic I found to be fascinating, this idea of solution-first marketing, because what generally happens and what I've seen most web designers do, including myself for many years, is you would sell your service first and you would sell kind of what you do. You would sell, in the case of web designers, a brand new website. Well, come to find out, you can actually get way better clients and you can get a higher conversion rate. And you can also take a client who was thinking maybe they just want to spend $2,500 and actually find out that they're open to spending $5,000 to $10,000 or so by offering better solutions first. And that's what we dive into in this episode. My guest, Lee Blue, you might recognize his name. He is similar to me. He is a web design coach, but he has much more of a hands-on mentoring type program for his designers who come through his website at doublestack.net. But I wanted to have him on to talk about this because he has a very interesting and unique approach to solution-based marketing. And what was extra interesting about this is originally we were going to talk about how to essentially get clients and leads without killing yourself and having a big grind. But the conversation really turned around and focused on solution-based marketing, which is basically escaping the grind of getting clients as kind of a byproduct of having a solution-based approach. So I kind of relabeled this podcast episode to focus on that. And what you're going to learn in this episode is exactly how to implement solution-based marketing in your sales strategy. So I'm so excited to see what you take away from this because I found the conversation fascinating. Lee was really fun to talk to, and I'm sure we're going to be doing this again. As you'll find out, there was so many different areas this conversation could have gone, but we tried to reel it in and keep it around solution-based marketing. So get ready to buckle in and have some fun because this one was great. Now, one thing we do talk about in the episode quite a bit is having ancillary services alongside your primary web design services. For example, let's say website designs are your main service, but maybe you're offering copywriting or SEO work or social media or other services that you can use in conjunction with your web design services. One of those that I highly recommend you at least have the foundational skill sets in is SEO. Whether you like it or not, if you're designing websites, SEO is going to be a big implication. And it's best for you as a web designer to at least know the foundations and to be able to do a lot of the on-site SEO work. And if that's you, if you'd like to learn more about SEO and you want to feel confident with it, and if you, as you'll hear in this conversation, if you want to have SEO be an upsell for your clients or use it as a solution-based strategy, come join my SEO course today. It's open right now for you. It is a very foundational type of SEO course that will help you get to know the basics and the most important things you need to know with SEO, because as we all know, SEO is this crazy, shady, scary, spammy type of world. But if you really only need to know the basics to really do some good damage with your websites. And if that's you, if you want some help with that, I'd love to share with you what I've learned in the SEO world and help you feel confident with the basics. So join my SEO course today, and you'll see how you can use it in conjunction with a solution-based marketing strategy. And without further ado, here is Lee Blue, and we're going to have some fun talking about some different marketing tactics you can use by, again, selling your solution first. Enjoy. Lee, welcome on to the podcast, man. It's great to have you on.
Thanks, Josh. It's awesome to be here. I'm really excited. I'm kind of been following you for a while, so it's going to be fun.
Well, it was timely and funny, like I mentioned before we went live, because I had seen you across my Facebook feed a couple times, and you have a very, very recognizable name. Lee Blue is just a cool name. I'm so jealous because it's way cooler than my name. So easy to remember. And then some of my students had mentioned you, and then when you came across and we got to chatting, I was like, oh, heck yeah, I want to have you on, because what's interesting about you is we were saying before we went live, we're kind of like co-opetition, although you have much more of a coach mentor approach with the people you take on, it sounds like. So just to kick us off before we dive into this really important topic of getting leads without basically killing ourselves, do you want to start off with, first of all, let everybody know where you're based out of, and then what do you do with your site at DoubleStack?
Cool. Yeah. So I'm in Virginia, which is a little bit different. A lot of people are in like Florida or California, or maybe Austin, Texas or something, but I'm over here in Virginia, and I'm not too far away from the Gravity Forms guys, all those, that whole team, and I think is based out of Virginia Beach. So I'm kind of halfway between Richmond and where they are. But yeah, so that's where I am. And as far as DoubleStack is concerned, there's a lot of free resources out there, but it tends to revolve mostly around like finding leads, pricing, kind of taking the next step from being like a freelancer into sort of building like a sustainable business where the business itself kind of has some value to it, more than just kind of finding just, sporadic jobs, just kind of helping people take that step. And there's tons of free resources on there on the website. And then there's also a mentoring program behind it. So like, if you really feel like you kind of want me to come along with you for like a couple of months and sort of help you with the process, then that's something that we can talk about too. But that's pretty much all it is.
So I think you and I differ, being that I have a little bit of that with my private mastermind web design club. But most of my stuff is my online courses. And of course, there's no limit to as many people want to join those. So you take a more hands-on approach with your students, right? As far as more of like a time period based type of guidance, mentoring. Is that right?
Oh yeah, it's super hands-on. So like I help you figure out what to say on your website. We write proposals together. Like if you want to create like a presentation, like say you're going to be at a chamber of commerce and you're going to give a talk somewhere or whatever, like we can write that together. And then your pricing, we kind of put that together. Because one of the big things that we do is we go high ticket. So the average proposal price is over $10,000. In fact, once you land a $10,000 client, I actually have this trophy that you get. So I'm mailing you this trophy. It's like the 5-figure family trophy and everything. And so a lot of people, when they come into the course, they're kind of selling sites for like $1,000, maybe up to $3,000. And then what we try to do is we try to do two things. One is to get the initial build out a little bit bigger, usually around like the $5,000 to $10,000 price point for the initial build, because it's more than the website now. It's like what to say on the site, right? Your marketing positioning, any kind of tools that you need for email list building or funnels or landing pages, that kind of stuff. And kind of set all that up. And that might take you 3 or 4 weeks to do. And so you charge like $5,000 for it. And then you also, and really the bigger part is what happens after you launch the site. And so we try to get a retainer in place for at least $1,000 a month, so maybe a little bit less, maybe an entry package could be like $850 per month. And that would kind of give you about 10 hours per month to work with your client. So like in terms of your weekly workflow, you're spending like 2 or 3 hours a week with one client, and you just keep doing that over and over. And that retainer, like if you're doing $850 a month, that's over $10,000 a year just for the retainer. Right. And then you add it to your $5,000 website. Now you've got these $15,000 clients. And then you think, well, what do I want my income to be? Well, what if you wanted to add $5,000 a month to your business? That's like $60,000 a year. You can do like 4 clients. And then you think, well, what if I want more? What if I want a 6-figure business? Well, what if you had 7 or 8 clients? Now you're like 100, 120 grand.
Well, it's one reason I wanted to have you on, because I know you focus more on the business strategy, sales and marketing type of things, which are really important. I mean, I focus on some of that as well, although I have, some design related topics and courses and resources and tech stuff. I kind of mix the two, but I did want to have you on to specifically talk about those type of pricing models, which I know we're going to dive into. And then specifically, one thing you and I were talking about was getting leads with avoiding just killing yourself, because it can be such a hustle. It can be such a drain, especially early on. But I've learned a lot of things that I'm happy to share, and I know you have as well. So it sounds like we're going to focus on kind of three main things, and I'll just hit those right now, and then maybe we can dive into those and just have a chat around this. I think it's good that you and I have a few points to go over, because I know if we don't, this could be a very, very wide-ranging, tangent-filled talk. So on my end, not your end. So number one, we're going to talk about solution first type of marketing, which I'm really excited to dig into. Then we're going to talk about outcome driven positioning. And we'll kind of explain what that means. And then value-based pricing, which seems like you've already kind of hit a little bit into that. And that's one reason I love web design, is because there's no right or wrong way to bill out for a project or price point. You can really do whatever works best and make sure it's a win-win for you and the client. So let's start out with that, Lee. Solution first marketing. I've got my own ideas with what I would imagine this would look like from a service on a website or an ad or something. But what are your thoughts on solution first marketing, and why is that so important?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. So I've been doing this. So I started my web design agency in 2002, which is like forever ago, right? And when I got started, this is like before WordPress even existed. And so I got out of college, I had this computer science degree. I started working for the government doing bioterrorism surveillance. And it was kind of a cool job, because I was going up and down the East Coast. So I didn't have to do the whole country. It was just basically from like Florida to about New York. And I would go to these basically hospitals and collect all this emergency room information, and then try to see if there's any anomalies in the data that gets collected from all the encounters. So for example, and this is back, I don't know if you remember, but remember like when anthrax was getting like mailed to people in envelopes, and people like open up these into like white powder?
That was shortly after 9/11, right? Or was it shortly before? Yeah, it was right around that time period. And then shortly after that, all these random birds started dying, and there's like this weird bird flu thing going around. And we're like, well, what is all of that? And so they hired me to try to investigate. Well, I wasn't the only one. There's a whole team of people doing all this. But I was part of the team, and we would go and try to say, hey, is there like, is everyone in New York coming down with some kind of weird respiratory thing? And if so, maybe that should trigger a flag for people to investigate. So that's kind of how I got started. But in 2002, which is after I did this for a couple of years, I ended up just opening up my own web design firm, kind of on the side at first, and then kind of going more full time, because as fun as the bioterrorism stuff was, it's very dry work, because like the story behind it is like really exciting, but like the day to day, it's like you don't even know what the encounters are. It's just the code numbers, and you're like, does this code show up more than that code? And you're going to all these hospitals. They have this ancient, technology where you're like FTPing stuff all over the place and trying to connect these old databases that don't want to talk to each other. And it can be kind of dry and frustrating. And it wasn't really tapping into that whole entrepreneurial thing that I really kind of have built into me. So I started up this web design thing. And so all of the, in fact, I was listening to one of your podcasts before when you guys were talking about different ways to get leads. And I think I've done all of the ways, right? So it's like, well, I didn't do Upwork because they didn't have Upwork back then, but like just partnering up with agencies, trying to just offer different kinds of services and hope that you get hired, and you make word of mouth referrals, all of those types of things. But today, and really I would say maybe over the past 5 years, so it's not brand new, but it's definitely the case now that when you go out and try to tell people that, hey, I'm a web designer and I do online marketing and stuff like that, people don't really know how to like refer people to you. It's like you're just telling people what they do or what you do. So like if you came up to me and you're like, hey, Lee, I haven't seen you all this time. Like, how are you doing? And I said, hey, Josh, it's great to see you, man. I'm doing web design. I got my own business to do marketing for folks. Then a really common response would be for you to be like, oh, that's awesome. And you congratulate me on how cool the job sounds. And, and if you kind of have a boring job, you're like, oh, I wish I had a job that was exciting as yours. And so you get a lot of compliments, but you don't get a lot of leads, So a better approach is to try to tell people like, who can you help? Like what can you actually do? Like what is the solution that you're offering? And so if you can do that, have like a solution in mind first, then you can basically reverse the process that most people go through to land clients. Because a normal process today is you get a lead, maybe it's a word of mouth referral, maybe it's from your marketing, who knows? It just comes in from somewhere. So that's step one, you get the lead. Step two is interview them to kind of figure out what they want.
And step 3 is you come up with a solution to do all that stuff. So that's kind of solution last at that point. And the problem with that is the marketing, because if you don't have the solution until the end, all you've got are your services to build your marketing around. So you kind of get stuck. You like have to say, I do web design, or maybe you niche down a little bit and say, I do WordPress development, or maybe you niche down even further and do, I do Divi development, something like that. But ultimately it's around the services. And now it's kind of like a collection. It's like I do web design and social media management and video production and email marketing.
That was my question I was going to lead into, is because I totally agree with this, Lee. It makes a lot of sense to kind of reverse it. You want to show the solution first. I mean, that's ideal marketing. It's the same thing I apply with my courses. It's like, I don't talk about the course until you find out what you're going to get. Like, what's the result you're going to get by going into this? And then there's the details. Same thing could apply here. However, for folks who have a lot of different services, even just web design itself could be quite a few different things in regards to SEO or content marketing or copywriting or all these other things in there. That's the trick. I would love to ask you this, and maybe we can dive into how to kind of frame these solutions. The average web designer who's maybe newer in the journey, they're just building typical brochure type websites. What is the main solution that they are hitting? Is it helping clients grow their business online? Have you found like a great term that would resonate with clients as far as what that solution is?
Yeah, so this is the hardest part of the whole thing, is to try to figure out what solution do you want to build. And kind of the short answer is pretend like you get a phone call, it's your best client ever. It's like, I can't believe this is a perfect client. And what are they telling you to do? Like, what are they telling you that they want? And what kind of industry are they in? And hopefully it's a combination of skills that you're good at, stuff that you like doing, like in terms of like the industry. Because like, say, for example, I know a lot of people are like, oh, I want to do like dentist websites because dentists have a lot of money and they can spend it on websites. But like, I don't want to work with dentists. I don't want to do pixel by pixel into people's mouths and stuff,
That's true.
Like, I don't have any problem with smile. I love smiles, but I don't want to like get in there.
Yeah.
I don't want to do pixel by pixel. So it's like, I don't want that. So you kind of think through, what do you want? Like, what would it be? And then kind of put yourself in their shoes. Like, if you owned that business, what would you do? Like, say, my daughter is kind of becoming a photographer. So we've been thinking a lot about photography recently. And so like, okay, she needs a website. She needs a great brand. She's probably going to need some social media, especially on Instagram. She's going to need an email system to kind of say, I did a wedding today. Next year it's going to be an anniversary, or maybe I did baby pictures today, and a year from now it's the first birthday. And, so like some kind of a, CRM for that. And you just kind of think about all the different stuff that kind of you pack into, if I were the photographer, what would I need to market my business? Mm-hmm. And then you've got all that stuff. So like all the things that you just mentioned, like copywriting and videography and just whatever your skills are, well, who needs that stuff? And package it together up front. And then you've got that solution. So it's going to be different for everybody. And there's a few factors you want to think through. Like, there's going to be target market, right? So like, is it going to be photography? Is it going to be real estate or accountants and bookkeepers? Or maybe it's not a target market based on a job title. Maybe it's a target market based on a common problem. Like think about like Angie's List, or I guess it's just Angie now. They rebranded. They took the list.
Oh, really?
Off.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it's just Angie now. But it's like, there's HVAC repair people, electricians, massage therapists, and all these people are in that one platform. And you have to say, why? Well, what's the common problem? So, well, they all want local leads.
Yeah.
So like maybe you've got a solution that, combines like a Google My Business account and different citations and local SEO and I don't know, just all the different kind of stuff that you need to get local leads. And you say, well, that's my solution. So anybody who needs local leads, hire me for that. And you wouldn't have a solution really for like e-commerce or like international businesses or whatever.
Sure.
You just got to focus on that just one thing.
And I could definitely see how the solution-based type of approach would be easier to figure out if you're going niche. And if you just work with, like eye surgeons, then it's fairly simple. I help, eye surgeons, whatever, get more leads to their website, whatever. Yeah. With a generalist approach, which was what I was as a web designer, I worked with all sorts of businesses, local and all over the US. I did find this tough, and I'll just say what I did that was really confusing for everybody early on is that I just said, I help grow your business. Well, what the heck does that mean? Like, people thought I was a consultant. They thought I was a a social media marketing. Like it was way too confusing for people. And what I did is I didn't take this solution-based approach exactly, but I did talk about what the deliverable was, which was an amazing new website. And that's what I always said right away was we build awesome websites. Then what I did was dive down into the solution-based stuff per main service. So, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this as kind of an approach because it's still so hard for that hero image, that first thing you're going to say, what exactly is the solution? It is, I totally agree. It kind of depends on what you have in your business, but I always felt like having the like what we provide. And then once you get this, boom, here are the additional solutions. If we have SEO, we help you get better rankings on Google. If it's copywriting, we help you write stuff that actually converts and turns leads into customers on the website, all this other stuff. If it's design, it's giving you a design you can be proud of and you want to send traffic to. What do you think of that approach? Is that a good compromise if we can't figure out that exact perfect solution heading?
Yeah. The more niche you can go, it seems the better it turns out to be. But the problem is nobody wants to just do one thing, especially people like us, where we could build websites for a wide variety of people. And so I like to make a really strong distinction between what you're doing with your business and what you're doing with your marketing. So like you can say, I want to build websites for photographers and real estate agents and chiropractors, like everybody, all those things are fine. But when it comes to your marketing, like if you believe that you can do a great job building websites for photographers, put a targeted marketing campaign in that hits photographers, and then have multiple marketing campaigns all running at the same time if you want to attract multiple clients. But what you don't want is leads coming in saying, hey, Josh, you know what? Can you migrate all of our contacts out of MailChimp and into Salesforce? I feel like we've really outgrown MailChimp and we want to do something more powerful now. Yeah. And then you'd be thinking, gosh, yes, I can, but I don't want to do that. That's not, I could do the work, but I don't want to do the work.
Yes. What is equally as important as figuring out what you do is what you don't do and making that very clear. Yeah, for sure. Or setting those boundaries. And I know that's harder for folks starting out because everyone wants to get every job possible, but trust me, the quicker you can say no, the better. And I'm sure you've seen that in your journey and a lot of your students as well.
Yeah, that's actually a good segue into the second thing that you mentioned about outcome-driven marketing.
Let's do it. I do have a couple ideas additionally with the marketing of as far as marketing to certain kind of niches within a main service, but we can hold on to that.
I don't want to skip ahead. Let's dive in.
Okay. Let's hit that because I do think that was a really valuable point you said about differentiating how you market your website versus your actual ads and your marketing or lead gens, whatever it is. I love that because this is something I'm a big proponent of. Is if you have website design as a primary service, of course, that could be for any small business or any business if you're not niching down. Now, I always found that I worked well with certain industries as I kind of moved along. I worked with a lot of home inspectors. I had some blue collar folks, some auto mechanics, some industries that seemed to go over really well. Looking back, what I probably would have advised myself to do is to keep my website, the main service is the same, but then branch out and add some more pages that were specific to those niches. Even if I don't put them on the front page of the website, they could still be a landing page that I would market to. How do you feel about that strategy? Is that what you kind of mean by kind of having some additional marketing that would lead into more targeted type of landing pages and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's kind of three things that I do. One thing is what you just said, have some landing pages on your site specific to certain markets that you want to serve. And then if you happen to be talking to somebody in real estate, send them to your real estate page. And it could be yourdomain.com/real estate, right? So it's super easy to remember. And then I've got these landing pages. A second thing that you can do is you can actually spin off a whole microsite just for one of the niches that you want to focus on, and even maybe have a domain name that has something about the niche in the domain itself. Sure. And then you have your main site, which is more general practice web design. And then you have these niche sites. And then at the bottom of every niche site, say, this is a product of my main site. So if you don't want to, and I have made this huge mistake myself. You don't want to spin off these little microsites and then think that's all that you do. You don't want someone to come and say, oh, you only have this one page website and that's it. What's that? Yeah. So it's much better in the footer somewhere, say, this is a product of this other big thing. And it's I do more than just one thing. So you kind of have your reputation behind all the different things. And
I love that because I think it's a great compromise between like really going niche and just focusing on one industry, but also leaving yourself open to different industries. I've had a lot of people on the podcast who go niche. I've got some colleagues who are really good at it, and I see the value in that. I totally understand it. However, I personally enjoyed working with different industries. I loved working with a steel company and then working with a local family business and then working with, I had one of my best clients was a business safety organization. Like I really enjoyed having these different targets, and it was just kind of fun to switch it up because I couldn't imagine designing the same site over and over and over and over and over and over again. I think that's what I guess I just don't know too many people who have gone really niche and are like, I just wake up every day loving designing the same type of site over and over. But I understand the value, and that's why I think this is a perfect little mix between the two. And the beauty about it is if you find that you are really resonating with certain groups pretty well. For example, one of my closest students, John, he's in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He is, I don't know, he's 40s, maybe early 50s. John, if you're listening to this, I'm so sorry. We're going later 40s. But he resonates really well with blue collar guys just because he's kind of that mold. He used to do a lot of that work. And as a web designer, he just relates really well to construction companies and to blue collar guys. And this is something I advised to him was create some landing pages, just like we're talking about, that are catered towards a construction company or HVAC or whatever it is. And then again, segue him to the main site. That way you leave yourself open. So all that to say, I think this is a great compromise for kind of like staying a generalist, but also having some niche opportunities. And what a great marketing tool because you can, target those. A little quick technical tip for everybody. If you want to have like a URL that's like real estate website designs, Virginia Beach or whatever in your case, I don't know if you've used Pretty Links. It's one of my favorite plugins for just redirecting pages. You can use Pretty Links and just call it real estate, like you said, Lee, and then that'll zip them over to the actual page. So a little tech tip for everybody. But no, I think that's great, Lee. Any final thoughts on this solution first marketing idea? Yeah.
So my whole thing, and I know this is not for everybody, so I'm not speaking to everybody at the same time, but my whole shtick on all of this is how do you go high ticket on it? Like, how do you get a client that's going to pay you $10,000 or more over the course of the year, as opposed to just trying to crank out, $1,500 websites. And the reason that I think people pay you more is because you need to know something special about the industry you're serving. So for example, like CBD products, that's a big thing. And I was just working with Vanessa. She's got a company where they make CBD products for athletes. And she happens to know a lot about marketing CBD products in terms of like what payment gateways can you use for these products? What are the age restrictions and state requirements for where you can ship them? How do you market this stuff on Facebook without getting your account banned? Like all of these different things come up. Whereas if you just went to a garden variety web designer and said, this is what we do, they might not know those things and could potentially cause you big problems. Whereas if you do know those things, you should leverage that knowledge, charge more, and have a better outcome for the client.
Yeah, well, that is well said. Everyone I've talked to who have been pretty niche always said that. They always have an up on everybody else because they know the industry, and inevitably you can charge more. And I'd imagine it just saves you from a bunch of extra R&D and a lot of time on your design and time actually planning stuff out and doing copywriting. So that definitely makes a lot of sense. And I guess, would you say one way we could do this is as we start to work with certain type of industries, then just add that in there in that landing page just to make that landing page almost even more valuable than, say, some of our other services? Is that a fair way to go about that?
Yeah, it really is. In fact, the biggest thing that people struggle with when we're working together is like, what target market should I pick? Like, what's my solution going to be? And one kind of quick hack is to just look at a past project that went really well. Like, even if it was the first time you ever did a website for IMAX movie screen cleaning business or something, it's like, it could be completely random, but like if it went really well and you liked it and you liked them, and you kind of want to do more, just kind of take the lessons you learned from that and say, hey, these are the things you need to do if you want to clean IMAX movie screens or whatever. And you kind of had that solution. And that's just a quick hack because you basically already know what works. And then you just kind of, spread it out a little bit broader, and then you kind of go with that as a solution. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I found is you tend, like when you get a really good project, you tend to get a lot of similar businesses if they refer you, or a lot of businesses just see, like, for example, I did a retina eye surgical place. It was one of my favorite clients. And I got a couple leads from people who just saw their site and clicked on the site designed by In Transit Studios, my agency. And that's how I got those leads. So it was a very warm lead, and it was in the similar vein of like medical type of field. And same thing happened with all the home inspectors I mentioned a little bit ago. Pretty much all my home inspector jobs stemmed off of one dude that I worked with, did a really good job. And then all of his colleagues saw his website and were like, oh my gosh, who did your website? Then I did their website. And then next thing I knew, I had people competing with each other in Columbus. So that was interesting. But all going back to the solution first marketing. And I think we've covered some tips to help folks with that and some strategies, which I'm glad to hear you say, Lee, because it definitely backs up what I've thought could work as far as kind of having these like structured, targeted, niche style landing pages that can be in conjunction with your main services if you want to work with everybody. I would love to dive into outcome driven positioning. That sounds like a cheesy corporate term to me, but I think in the case of web design, I could see this working. Do you want to kind of explain, kind of what that is and how that relates to this?
Yeah. So this has a couple of implications. One implication is that you probably have a solution that we were just talking about. And then you say, well, rather than marketing the business based on the ingredients of the solution, you market it based on the outcome that you get from doing all that stuff. So like if we were talking about the photography thing, so rather than saying, we're going to do branding, web design, Instagram, whatever, all the different things, you would say, well, what do you get out of that? It's like, well, maybe you get like a 6-figure business you can run out of your house, even if you don't have a studio, just with your camera. And so then you would say the outcome that I feel like I can help people create would be how to build a 6-figure photography business working out of your house with a camera. And then say that on your website. And then that allows the client, this causes it's a kind of a domino effect of really good things to happen for you. The first thing that happens is you've bundled together all the stuff that you do the best because you've thought about it up front and you feel confident. You don't get that whole, hey, can you migrate me to Salesforce kind of lead? You get clients that want you to do your best stuff, presumably in a field that you know something about and that you like. And since it's your best stuff, you can charge the most for it because that's what's going to get the best outcomes for people. And so now you're really maximizing your earning potential by packaging together all your best stuff all at once. And the client only has to make one decision. Do I want the 6-figure photography business or not?
Gotcha.
That's the decision. And so that's kind of domino effect number one. Domino effect number two is the leads that you get from it. Because if you say, hey, Lee, what have you been doing? And I say, oh, I help photographers build these home-based businesses and they don't even need a studio. They just work right out of their house with a camera. Then you think, oh, you got to meet my friend Jessica. Like she's been trying to get her business off the ground. And so people start to play matchmaker with you. It's almost like dating. That's
true. What's funny about this is I've learned a lot in my journey with how to phrase like short descriptions and blurbs. And even like with my podcast intro, I really, really thought out what the heck should I say in my podcast intro? Do I want to tell people how to design sites or to use Divi or certain tools? What I ended up doing was unintentionally having more of this outcome solution-based approach, which is I help people build a successful web design business and achieve the lifestyle they want to live. And those two little quotes right there have brought so many people who are like life and balance focused type entrepreneurs. A lot of people are digital nomads. I never thought I would have such a following of digital nomads because I'm not. I have a family here. The most traveling we do is a couple times a year. So I'm by no means a digital nomad, but the tools and the tactics and everything that, like you mentioned, are kind of the dominoes behind that all lead to that. So that was just a practical example of how if you do come out with the outcome positioning, it really makes a big impact because suddenly when somebody sees anything I provide on conversion tips or SEO tips, it's not necessarily just about website. It's about what does that lead to? It leads to a lifestyle change. It leads to freedom. It leads to all these other big things. So I love that, man. It makes a ton of sense. And I think in regards to like the average web designer, I think SEO services are probably one of the easiest to probably talk about outcome because it's like, we want to help you get better rankings on Google. Then how do we do that? Well, then there's keyword research and on-site, all that stuff that could go from there. I still struggle with web design in general, like when it comes to design, because I guess like having a website you can be proud of, having a website to get you more leads, those are all outcomes. I know that's a little more tricky depending on the niche, but yeah, I love that. I didn't mean to kind of derail us or cut you off, but I definitely stand by kind of you show the end first and then talk about how you're going to get there. It makes it an easier sell, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I would even, from what you just said about the outcome of SEO, I'd like bump the outcome even higher than that. So in fact, I just posted something on Instagram. I almost never post on Instagram, but I just posted something last night about SEO. And it was, so suppose you're an SEO guy and you feel like you can do an awesome job with link building and improving your rank and all that stuff. And so you also want to get leads for yourself. So you create like an email opt-in, like a PDF or something with like your top 10 favorite SEO strategies. And you think, well, what should the headline be? Like, what do I put on the opt-in form to get people to download this thing and start building up kind of like this warm leads database for yourself? And so you think, well, it's my top 10 list of SEO strategies. So the headline's going to be the top 10 SEO strategies that are working now. And you kind of put, okay, that's great, right? And so you're thinking it's great value. You spend all this time, it's your expertise and whatever. But the problem tends to be the people that are looking for the top 10 SEO strategies that are working now are probably not the clients that you want to be hiring. They're probably other SEO guys, just like you.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you're like a med spa owner or something like that, you're not really thinking, man, I wish I could be an SEO expert. What are the top 10 strategies? You're probably thinking, how do I get leads? I'm buying these ads. The ads aren't working. Is there some organic way that I can get better leads? And then you think, well, if you're the SEO person, well, you just made a whole document with like the top 10 ways to get leads without buying ads. And like, that's the outcome. It's like, forget about the rankings, forget about it. It's like, I want leads. I don't want to buy ads. So turn your headline into the top 10 ways med spas generate leads without buying ads. And now you've got alignment with your audience, like who your audience is and what your audience is thinking. And you're kind of using the words that are already in their heads. And when you see that, I called it a hot, sticky headline. It's like, it's hot, it's rising above the noise, it like sticks in your head. And that's kind of what I'm talking about with the outcomes. Like the ranking is sort of a side effect. It's like, yes, you get better ranking, but it's not just the ranking. It's like, well, what do you do with it? Like, what pages do you want to rank? And is there some kind of call to action? Is there any funnel in place? There's other things that kind of need to go into it to make sure you get the leads.
That's great. That makes a lot of sense. It's so funny because we were just having this conversation. We've been having it for a while now in my web design club because a lot of my students are doing more content marketing and lead gens and stuff like that. And a lot of them were doing just that. They were creating content that was essentially attracting DIYers and other web designers. And we had to talk, and I was like, listen, you have to be very, very strategic with how you create this content and make sure it's towards a business owner. A business owner is not going to want to know the top tips for a WordPress, something WordPress related or Divi related. They have no idea what that is, more than likely. If it comes to getting leads, or I still have some ideas on SEO, but I agree, like getting better rankings on SEO is kind of like the step before the actual end goal. So getting more leads through organic SEO, whatever it is, all those tips are going to be much more appealing to business owners who you want to work with. So having like a strategy behind all that, I love. I couldn't back you up on that more. That's great. Yeah. And
well, awesome.
Well, I was thinking too, because outcome driven positioning, I'm sure there's different like levels you could take with this depending on the service. And I think this is where that idea of like having niche type of web design pages, how awesome would it be to have that solution first type of marketing backed up by what is the outcome that this is going to provide you? We help real estate websites convert, at a 50x higher rate or whatever it is. If you can back that up with results, like what a perfect opportunity to bring this in. What other type of outcomes do you feel like web designers are helping clients with that maybe we haven't thought about, other than the typical getting more leads to a website and maybe some SEO? Are there other outcomes that you've seen that a lot of web designers that you know of are helping with that we may not just be thinking about or recognizing that we're actually doing?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think there's more than like a surprising number, like more than meets the eye, because like I almost like over the past probably even 10 years, even for a long time, I've almost completely stopped talking about web design. Because like if I walked up to you and I said, hey, Josh, I was looking at your website, and like, say maybe maybe you're the photographer person. And I said, hey, Josh, I've been looking at your photos on Instagram. They look awesome. So I checked out your website and it looks kind of out of date. And I saw some broken links and it's not really working on mobile. Man, I think we should really update your site. And then you would probably say to me, Lee, I don't even know why I have this site. I don't get any leads to that thing. I don't want to spend any more money on something that doesn't work. What if I just shut the whole thing down and I just use Instagram entirely? Right. So like when I position myself as someone who offers websites, you tend to get a lot of responses like that where people are like, I don't really want the website. So if you instead said, hey, let me show you the system that we're using to build six-figure photography business, and we work right out of your house, now I've got your attention, right? So it's like, I'm still going to build you a website and do SEO and link building and all the other things, but I'm not talking about that yet. I'm talking about the thing that you're struggling with, right? So what the end result is, you're going way further upstream in the person's mindset. So like if you find that you get clients who are looking for websites, you have to think about where are they in the chain of solving their problem. It's probably really close to the end. They're thinking, maybe I've already got a marketing team in place. I've already done a bunch of other stuff in terms of what services and pricing I have. I just need somebody to put it online for me. And I want it cheap, right? $500. It's the most cost-effective way to just get a website. So if you want to do better than that, in two ways, how do you get the price up and how do you get a longer term relationship out of it so you get recurring revenue? Then you want to go way further up the stream and be like, you want to connect with somebody when they're thinking, man, I know I take great pictures. People seem to really like the photo shoots, but I'm just not getting the leads that I want. Well, if you had marketing about, well, let me show you how to put the infrastructure in place so you can actually drive a six-figure income just working right out of your house. Now you're interested. You see what I mean? So that's a different way to do the outcome.
I could see this instead of just saying, well, I could build you a nice website explaining the solutions and the outcomes. And I do think that would be a perfect segue into the importance of websites, because I'm sure you'll back me up in saying websites are more important now than ever before, because as we all know, if you run your business off of Instagram, what happens if you get kicked off or banned or whatever? Like these stories are happening left and right now. And if you put your entire business on a platform that you don't own, best of luck. Like you could lose everything. So I think I hate to use fear tactics for sales, but I do think in the case of like a photographer or some other folks who have more big, social media type followings, a website is more important than ever. And I do think this is a great way to kind of come in with the website and make sure clients and leads understand the importance of that. And to that point earlier, because I've had those clients who are like, well, do I need to worry about my website? It's not doing anything for me. Well, of course it's not doing anything for you. It sucks. And I haven't said that exactly to clients, but I have said, well, that's true, but that's because your website's so bad. Like, what if you had a beautiful website that converted and it's going to help you get more leads that you would be proud of and that you'd want to showcase? And then in all of your marketing, instead of marketing to your Instagram or your Facebook, you could actually market to your website. You get more traffic. You have all these, that was the approach that I took. And I will say, this is something I still think is very worthwhile, because I was amazed at how many clients resonated with the idea that they would have a website they would be proud of. That statement right there surprisingly piqued the interest of so many leads that I had, because their websites were so bad and they never wanted to market it, and they never felt like any of their other I think their other marketing was so scattered. Instead of having one central place where everything goes back to, it was always scattered. It was always going somewhere else. There was always a different landing page builder or whatever. And I guess I would just implore everyone to maybe try that, maybe to add that in here somehow, because there really is a lot to having an online presence that you feel excited about, that you want to drive people to. And of course, that's, really, it's easier to say when you have like an e-commerce site, but for an HVAC company who might not get the reason why they need a website, something like that as kind of the home where everything pulls back to, I think that's where the value is. But again, it stems from that outcome-driven marketing. So I love that. I do want to leave some time here, Lee, for value-based pricing, because now that we've got all these strategies in place, we get a lead. I know we're not going to go too far with actually onboarding and getting clients and proposals, but this is where like pricing comes into play with these type of projects, because if we are going to offer SEO and content and whatever else we're doing, conversion-based design, along with all the other things that go into web design. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about pricing. And it was interesting to hear some of your ideas on pricing. So I'm going to turn it over to you. What are your thoughts on value pricing for these type of jobs?
Yeah, you're awesome at running a podcast. This is a great segue, because what you were just talking about with all the different outcomes, it goes directly into the pricing, because like some of the outcomes could be, okay, I built the website, but I also help them set up a podcast and get the image right for their podcast cover. And I also help them get a YouTube channel and all the graphics that they need for their thumbnails. And I also help them with their email marketing. And then we've got funnels, and we've got landing pages. And then we have, email opt-ins for the landing pages. And we want to try out different ones from time to time to see what converts better. And so you've got different headlines and copywriting services and different graphics. Maybe blue converts better than red or whatever. And so you're constantly trying all these things out all the time. And so one of the things that's kind of an implication of all the stuff we've talked about so far is that you have fewer clients that you work with forever. It's kind of like the Jerry Maguire approach to like web design. You ever see Jerry Maguire? Yeah.
The sports agent has one client for a little while, and then
Yeah. And he like writes this whole memo about how we want to have more in-depth help for these clients and, fewer clients that we really help in this ongoing way. It's kind of like that. And so there's implications to that, which means like once you get to the point where you have like 7 or 8 clients, or maybe even like 6 or 7 clients, you're making like 10 grand a month off of all of this stuff. And then you think to yourself, well, I probably don't really need any more leads unless I want to scale up as an agency. Like some of the people that I work with are happy making 10 grand a month, and they like the lifestyle of it. And they do like the digital nomad thing, or just have a lifestyle just working at their house or whatever with their family, and they're feeling great about it. And other people are like, man, okay, now that I've really got this really firm foundation, let's start bringing on some people and, scale it up to $500,000 or whatever. But the number of leads that you need is just dramatically reduced compared to what it would otherwise be like if you're just cranking out 3 or 4 websites every month.
Yeah.
So that gets into the value pricing.
So let's kind of dive into this model and kind of maybe even rehash what you talked about earlier on, Lee, with like, what does this look like? So we've talked a lot about pricing recently on the podcast, about the different types of pricing models, with fixed pricing, which is what I always did, like website for $3,500 on average or $4,000. And then we'll have hosting and maintenance. And then later on, we can revamp the site for a lesser fee, or I always definitely encourage the hosting and maintenance to build that relationship. Generally, clients would revamp a site either partially or totally within about 3 to 5 years. So it'd be kind of like a new sales cycle with that, around that same amount. A lot of times they would have spur on projects, like they would have a different company they would launch, or they would have a competitor that they work with, or a partner that they worked with, and they want to bring them on. So those were all ways that I was able to generate more income with a fixed pricing model with like lower recurring. But yeah, let's dive into kind of what you're talking about here, because it sounds great. 10 clients paying 10 grand a month. That sounds awesome. But yeah, what are the implications? What are the practicalities of this? Knowing that, again, we already sold the solution and the outcomes before this, which opens the door for that.
Yeah, this is great. So one of the things that I like to add in addition to hosting and maintenance is marketing. Okay. Right. So like you can't charge $1,000 a month just for hosting and maintenance usually, unless it's like a gigantic site or whatever.
Yeah,
you don't want to host that one. $50 to $100.
If that's the case, you don't want that one.
Yeah, you want to just offload that to someone else. But to get the price point up to somewhere around $1,000 a month, you need to have at least a basic marketing plan in place.
Okay.
And this has an implication, right? So like if you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to sell a website and I'm going to sell this hosting, maintenance, and marketing plan, what's more expensive? Well, the hosting, maintenance, and marketing plan is like way more. It's like, that's going to be like $10,000, $15,000, where the website itself might just be like $5,000, right? Or maybe even less. It's like most people think websites are like $2,000 or less, especially if it's an affordable website, right?
Right.
Like somebody comes to you and like, hey, Josh, I want to buy an affordable website from you. And you say, okay, well, here's something for $2,000. And then you kind of build out the site. And then you're like, okay, well, now let's do this maintenance plan. And like, okay, well, what's that going to cost me? And you're like, yeah, it's like, 10 grand over the course of the year, whatever. It's like you just tried to take a $2,000 budget and stretch it into like a $12,000 project. And that's just too much stretching for most people. If you can't go that far, it's too much.
Yeah.
So we use this strategy called flip the offer. And what that means is you don't really sell the website. You sell the marketing strategy and the marketing plan. And so you say, these are the tools that we're going to do landing pages. You might even do paid ads. And the ad spend is not part of your management fee. That's something else. So you yourself are actually making $1,000. And if there's an ad spend on top of that, then so be it. But it could be that. It could be SEO. It could be social media management, it could be email marketing, it could be landing pages and funnels and drip campaigns and like all the stuff that you need. And you say, this is how we're going to reach your audience. This is how we're going to warm them up. And this is how you get new clients. And look, what if we could just do 2 or 3 clients a month for you? What do you charge for a CPA client? And you're like, oh yeah, we charge like $5,000 a year, kind of something like that for our average small business CPA account or whatever. You're like, okay, well, you're talking like 10 to 15 grand a month if you could just add 2 or 3 clients. And then that booms up this big value there for you. And then so they say, okay, yeah, it's worth 10 grand to make 100 grand kind of a thing. And then you say, well, in order to get the best results out of this marketing plan, we're also going to need to update the website. And then you add the $2,000 website.
A part of the marketing plan.
Yeah. But now look what you've done though. So you've taken this like $10,000 client and stretched it up to like 12,000 or 15, which is a lot easier than taking like a $2,000 client and trying to bump that up to 12 or 15. And so that's the whole flip the offer strategy. And it leads you into value pricing because the value it's not in how long it took to build the site or what the tech specs are or any of that stuff. The value is in, well, what's it going to do for the business? And then you put your cost in the middle of all of that somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be somewhere north of what your real costs are. Like you'll probably have an hourly rate you want to make for yourself. And you might even have some outsourced costs and maybe you have to buy some stock photos or something. And so that kind of puts the floor as to what you want to charge. And then you have like the upper limit is probably, depending on who the client is, sometimes you can go as high as like 50%. Like if you think you can make 100 grand for them, you could charge up to like 50 grand.
Sure.
Usually that's a little too high. I like to kind of shoot more towards like 30%.
Yeah.
So like if I feel like I could and it's the annual value. It's not like the lifetime value because that's, in 1,000,000 years from now, you'll be a billionaire. Like that's too far. But like, reasonable expectations for where the client wants to go over the next 12 months. And then you kind of, what can I contribute to that? And if you think maybe you can contribute 100 grand to it, you can charge up to like $30,000. And so you think, well, somewhere between 30 grand and whatever my costs are. And then you have a couple that usually there's a pricing curve that goes into it, like a small, medium, and large approach. So like sometimes people will think, yeah, I just want to do the biggest one right now. Money's not an issue. Let's do the 30 grand one. And other times people are going to be like, I can't really do all that. Well, what are the other options? And then you maybe have a couple smaller options as well.
Yeah.
But here's the key. Let me mention what the key is before we move on.
Sure.
You don't want to water down the outcome. Right. So you don't want to say, well, okay, we'll do this smaller thing and we'll take out some of the features and then we're reducing scope and therefore that's why it's cheaper. Now, obviously you are reducing scope and taking out some of the things, but the way that you present it makes a big difference because you're not really saying we'll never do the other things. We're just prioritizing. We're saying these are the most urgent things to do now. Once results start coming in with that, then we have a really clean upgrade path to the larger projects, to the medium and large one. So what you're ultimately doing is you're stretching the timeline. Okay. You're not reducing the outcome. You're just saying, hey, this ladder, everywhere on this set of stairs or whatever goes to the goal. It's just like, how high up the stairs are we going to start? We're going to start right at the top and boom, we get it as fast as we can. Or are we going to be a little bit further down and kind of have to do it more incrementally?
Yeah. And I was always such a big fan of doing things in phases, particularly for clients who I really wanted to work with, great clients, but maybe they didn't have a budget right up front for a $10,000 to $15,000 deal. But what if we started out at 5 and then added more on moving forward? That always worked out well. It sounds like that's the same approach here. If you had to go that route to kind of set the foundation, which in that case, I imagine you got to figure out the priorities, which again, are going to be the website, probably going to be foundational SEO and some of that stuff. And then you might add social media or some of the other things, I imagine. Now, kind of what you're talking about here, Lee, is really a digital marketing agency. I mean, really a full stack type of, agency. What about the designers like myself, who I never wanted to touch social? I never did ads, never did any of that stuff. Can we still utilize this for just doing websites and some of the more basic services in regards to even like SEO? Can this still work?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, it's better for people like us where we have really specific things we never want to do because you just don't put that in your solution. You just like, because you don't want people to say, oh, Josh, man, I really need you to manage my Instagram account or all of my social media and a website. You're like, well, I don't want to do all that other stuff. I want more on-point referrals. I don't want people to ask me to do things I don't want to do.
And this is a really important point too when it comes to like if you just do the website and hosting and have these ancillary services in conjunction with that, is because I actually think, and I know from myself and my agency and a lot of my students, I think web designers are in a very unique position where we can have those lifetime clients more so than any other industry, particularly if we always maintain the website and do the on-site stuff. Because let's face it, digital marketing agencies, they come and go. I don't know what the standard churn time is, but it's probably 3-6 months on average for like most advertising companies that I know of and digital marketing companies. They would move through clients pretty quickly. Like client would use them for 3-6 months, they'd move on. Now, the problem that I've seen with marketing companies that take over the entire website is just that. If you move on from them, suddenly you need to get a new web designer, you need to get a new hosting company, and it's a nightmare for clients. So I say that to say, as web designers, I think we're in a great spot because we can still partner with folks who do that. And I am a huge proponent of co-opetition when it comes to web designers, hosting and maintaining the site, doing on-site stuff. But if your client wants to hire a marketing company to run social media ads, and if they need to get into the site for some stuff, that's fine. I'm totally cool with that. That way, when the client moves through this agency and they fire them in 6 months because they're not happy with the results, we're still their web guy or web gal. What are your thoughts on that, with how that could transition into more value-based kind of stuff? Because I've definitely found that to be the case. I always try to do the website and the hosting and maintenance. The other stuff could come and go because those strategies will change, but websites forever, baby. You're not going to want to change the hosting nonstop. Clients are going to get to know that pretty quick.
Yeah. So I would say that part of the solution first idea that we were talking about, and really the outcome driven positioning that we were talking about too, really everything we've talked about so far kind of implies that you're going to create some kind of result for people that has like tangible, measurable business impact for them. And so like when we were talking about like the small, medium, and large pricing, like I never want the small pricing to be so small that it's not enough to generate some kind of income or some kind of result for them.
Well,
so like I try not to just have a project that's like, oh, like, let me just refresh your logo, or let me only redesign your website so it looks beautiful, but I'm not going to do anything to drive traffic there or anything like that. Because then you end up either missing out on all of that marketing opportunity because someone else is hired to do it, or nobody does it. And the client's like, man, I just dropped $5,000 on this website and I'm still in the same spot I was before because I'm not getting any more results out of it. So I like the smallest package to be something that will create an outcome, even if you can't redesign the whole site yet, right? So like maybe it's this big site and it's going to be this big expense to redo the whole thing. So you say, hey, why don't we just do a landing page? And we'll just we'll do all the fresh branding, everything on this landing page. And that way, when you start driving traffic into this page, that one page will look awesome and start getting you some more leads. And then as that starts working, then we might redesign the whole site after that. So you can reprioritize the order in which you do the stuff. But I always like to have some kind of a marketing component to the package, even if you don't do it yourself. Bring somebody else in to help so that you can position it in like a value-driven way. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point, because whether we like it or not, as web designers, your clients are going to expect you to be in some sort of marketing role. I mean, it caught me by surprise in the beginning because I built websites. They looked really nice. I got better at conversions as time went on. And then inevitably they would want to know, how are the leads going? How are we going to kick this out? Like, how are we going to promote this? I was always called on with the marketing stuff. And that's when I realized I don't want to be a digital marketer, but I do have to at least provide some strategies and partner with some people who do this, because it is much harder to sell a website that looks nice and represents you than a site that is going to get more leads and double your income or whatever it is, or provide a 6-figure work from home business. That is the case. And I know it might be daunting for some people, but I would say it is definitely worthwhile having some sort of component in there of marketing, because I think that is huge. I was actually going to ask you, if most of my students are doing website design, hosting, maintenance, maybe some basic SEO, what would be another area that most of my students that you would recommend should focus on? I'm sure it could depend on whether they're interested in social media or video or different type of marketing. Is there something that you've seen that is like just kind of hitting right now that you think is maybe the next most important thing that kind of sits in this marketing seat along with websites?
Yes, email marketing. I think email marketing is the biggest one by far. I mean, it's not new. It's been around forever. But in terms of the revenue that it creates for people, at least from what I've seen from my clients and even for myself, it's like probably 10 times what all of other social media combines itself. Like social media seems to be pretty good for kind of getting awareness of who you are or whatever kind of out there. Mm-hmm. But in terms of actually monetizing the audience and trying to help people, email seems to be great, because like one of the things about email that's really important, I think, is people have to choose to do something with the message that they get. Like if you send out a tweet, it just kind of evaporates or whatever. But if you send someone an email, they're going to see it. They might not open it, but at least they have to delete it. They have to take some action. And I think that's really important to kind of say, hey, you know what? Email marketing. Because, and here's the other thing why web designers should do email marketing and not just random email marketers, because you have to go somewhere when you click the email. Yeah. So like you get the email, you need some call to action in the email. And so maybe it's just, sign up for a webinar, or maybe it's, did you know about this other product? And so you make a landing page for the product. So pretty much every time you send an email, you're either building a landing page or optimizing a landing page or doing something on the website. Yeah. And so if I was a web designer, and you don't really have to learn anything new to send emails. It's like, okay, go get a MailerLite account or a MailChimp account or something, and then just send the emails. But make sure that when you do, you expect the person to do one thing, like put one thing you want someone to do in the email, and then keep track of who's clicking what. So like if you're a nutritionist and you send out a newsletter and you say, hey, look, I've got all this gluten-free protein powder over here, and I've got stuff to manage your blood sugar over here for people that might be diabetic or something. And then you kind of send out those two things. Well, the people that click the gluten-free stuff, you have that be like a landing page, like my top 10 gluten-free dessert recipes. But you probably wouldn't send that to the diabetic people because it's going to whack out their blood sugar. So then you kind of keep track of that. And now you've got these segmented audiences, and you can start driving specific stuff like traffic to these individual landing pages that you can create for your client. And you don't have to do it. And it's not, you don't have to constantly be on it all the time like you would with like normal traditional like social media. And you got these great stats, and it's super easy to get into. It's very cost effective.
Yeah. It's very measurable. And I'll tell you this, if you can help a client grow their email list, that is where you have some leverage on value-based pricing, because you get somebody's email and have a potential customer that they could do whatever they want with. That's awesome. I couldn't agree more, Lee. I love that you said that, because actually I guess I figured that would be one option, but I'm glad to hear you say that is, the one that you would suggest, because I totally agree. I think it's very worthwhile getting into. And then even if we don't love email marketing or if we're new, it is fairly easy to figure out. I mean, the cool thing about email marketing is a lot of the principles that you can use in MailChimp, you can use in ConvertKit or whatever. It all transfers fairly easy. It's a lot easier than figuring out the ad algorithms between Facebook and Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever. So I love that. I couldn't agree more. Gosh, yeah, that's just, yeah. Don't have too much.
And especially for web designers. Right? Because like if you're not a web designer, what are you going to do? You're going to have to hire a web designer to make these landing pages so that when people click the emails, they go somewhere. Because the last thing you want to do is send an email to your homepage or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a great point too. That really leaves a lot of leverage for adding like more additional work too, because if you create a lead gen that goes somewhere, you can then talk about strategy with the client and say, after they sign up for this, let's really take the engagement to the next level. Like maybe we send them to a customized page that has some more information for them, or, they can get more information, or maybe an upsell or something while the emails that we set up are like sequenced and coming to them. There's so many things you can do with that. And it's all replicatable. So like if it works really good for one client, you could take those same systems and, switch out graphics, text, everything else, and replicate it for another. So I think that's great, because that's something where whatever's working for one client will likely work with a lot of other ones. And then there you go. Then there's your own email blast where you could say, hey, we did a case study on this recent client. This really helped them boost their leads. Do you want to try it too? There's your upsell. So
you see what you just did? You made a solution.
There's a solution. There it is. Yep. That's awesome. Well, Lee, this has been great, man. I really love this chat. Yeah, I mean, gosh, value-based pricing and stuff, we could go on forever, but I love it. What's cool about this is I think this talk, where number one, we talked about solution-first marketing, number two, outcome-driven positioning, and then three, value-based pricing, is I think most web designers struggle with doing this in the reverse order. I don't know if it was intentional that you have these three set out like this, but most web designers are like, websites are $2,500. The outcome of this website is this, and then the final solution is this. So it is kind of like reversing it to where here's a solution, here are the outcomes. These could be on a macro or micro level. And then boom, here's the pricing. It's going to work for you depending on what services we need. I love it. That was great, man. I love it. I hope this is inspiring. I mean, this isn't an exact path per se, but you can certainly implement all these strategies, as a whole or in pieces. So I really love this. I have one final question for you. Before we get to that though, Lee, do you want to let everybody know where they can go to find out more about you or connect with you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So a couple places. The best place to go is doublestack.net. And the name is kind of a play on like being like a full stack developer where you have like the tech stack, but you also need like the marketing stack. So it's like the marketing stack plus the tech stack.
Oh, okay. I was actually curious because I said full stack earlier and I was like, I wonder if that had anything to do with the name. Yeah.
It does. Yeah. So I used to consider myself a full stack developer, and then I kind of got into more marketing, kind of do both things at the same time. And really you kind of need both, because if you're building websites, you really are in marketing, like it used to be you're kind of in software development, and that's like a whole nother conversation we could get into. But like, I think one of the big challenges that web designers have is if you find yourself kind of stuck in the software development mindset while trying to sell a website, it just falls apart. Like you can't do it anymore because you really aren't inventing software or creating anything new. You're just assembling the pieces that people need in more of a marketing perspective. But anyway, that we could maybe have a part 2 sometime. We'll talk about that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
But doublestack.net, that's our website. You can check out a ton of free resources in there. I post like weekly workshops that I do for free where you can check that out. And then I also have this Facebook group. It's called Building High Value WordPress Sites. And that's also free. And I jump in there live on Tuesdays and do a live workshop or something for a couple minutes and kind of answer live questions and stuff there.
Gotcha. Perfect. Yeah, that's a great distinction between how web designers are viewed now versus before. I totally agree. Before it was like, oh, you're a tech guy. You can help with email issues, which you still get some of that, but now it's definitely more marketing. So I think that's a very, very worthwhile point to keep as an underlying thought moving forward. I was trying to think of a good final question for you because we've hit quite a few, but I was curious, of all the students you've worked with, what are some of the commonalities that go into a $10,000 project? Is it like, is a website always included in that? Is SEO a big component of that? Or do you find that email marketing or social media is involved with that as well? Because I'm sure at the 10,000 range, that could probably be like a phase 1, and then you would go up from there. And I ask that because I wonder, for a lot of my students and people listening to this who are maybe at the $2,000 to $3,000 range and they'd love to get a 10K project, what would that entail on average? Well, I guess it's kind of an open-ended question, but yeah, like what are some of the commonalities of a lot of like a $10,000 project for web designers?
Well, first, it's the audience that you're trying to sell it to, right? So let me see if I can summarize this real quick. There's really like 3 criteria that I look for a really good client that can afford this kind of stuff. And there's also people that you're not looking for. Like you're not looking for the side hustlers that just want you to work for free. And if it works out, maybe they'll pay you later. You're not really looking for people that can't scale, right? So like if you're just doing like piano lessons in your living room or something, then you don't need to spend $15,000 a year to market that. I mean, that would be silly. So there's a couple criteria you're looking for. One is it's really helpful if it's a business to consumer client. Or maybe business to small business, but like nonprofits, government contracts, and like large corporate deals tend not to be ideal for the kind of clients that we work with most of the time. You know, like Samsung isn't selling iPhone displays to Apple because someone over at Samsung like hopped on a webinar one day or joined an email list or something,
That's true.
It's like the sales cycle is just too long for the tools that we have to be as effective as they need to be.
I always love when people or family members would be like, so who have you worked with? I'm like, do you really expect that what company am I going to say that I would, working out of my house that you would know? Like, am I, I just felt that was stupid. Like, I I work with Chase Bank. Like, do you think I can handle doing the website for Chase? No. What a stupid question, but I'm sorry. I always got that. It always made me so angry because I was like, what do you expect me to say? You're not going to know any businesses I work, more than likely, maybe some local ones, but anyway, sorry.
That's a good point. Yeah. And so kind of to that point, it's like, it's great if it could be like a business to consumer or business to small business. So you're looking at like real estate, automobile detailing or whatever, med spas, anybody you would see in Angie's List, anyone in like health and wellness, tends to be pretty good. So you're kind of looking at that. So business to consumer or business to small business. Number two is it's great if they can sustain like a gross revenue of at least $100,000, right? Okay. So they don't have to be there yet. Like they can be a startup that wants to get there, but it needs to scale. It needs to be able to scale to at least $100,000, if not significantly more, because you're going to be asking them for like $15,000. And so that's going to be about 15% of their annual gross revenue, which is okay, right? So like, I think most people kind of understand that somewhere around 15 to 25% of your gross revenue kind of goes into marketing. Mm-hmm. And so that's okay. But if it's like $200,000, then you're still only asking for 15. It's like, that's only half of that, right? So like 7% or whatever. So you're kind of looking for someone who can at least scale up to, or has already achieved $100,000 of revenue gross, like total for not what they pay themselves necessarily, but their gross. And then the third one that I like to really focus on is, can the clients, like when you get a customer for your client, is the annual value of that transaction at least $1,000, right? Because if you're just selling like handmade jewelry on Etsy or something like that, you would have to drive so many leads it's just really, really challenging to get enough transactions to make it worthwhile. So it's not a deal breaker, but it's nice. Like even if it's like lawn care, right? It's like you don't pay $1,000 to get your lawn mowed unless you live on like a farm or something. But like over the course of the year, it's like, okay, they're mowing the lawn, they're doing mulching, aeration and seeding and cleaning up the leaves and like whatever, like all that stuff over the year. So you'll probably pay way more than $1,000. And especially if you then hire them to do some landscaping and stuff too. So even like lawn care can fit. It doesn't have to be like, high-end eye surgeon doctors or something, right? It could be, but it doesn't have
I even
to be.
had that same mindset with automotive folks, like the automotive, who was my kind of family's automotive that we use. And then when I did his website, I kind of use that same analogy. I asked them, how much is your average customer paying? If it's 500, even if it's on the low end, $500 per year on average, then if we do a website for 30, or let's just say $3,000, it would only take 6 customers for that to even off. And then it's all profit from there. And that's on the low end. So I could definitely, I love this approach of, again, I like how you're thinking outside the box. It's not necessarily the services that would equate to 10K. It's what type of clients are willing to pay that and are going to be worthwhile working with. I love that.
Yeah. And so quick summary, business to consumer, or business to small, like a tax accountant would be fine. Basically, what you're trying to do is, can the person make a decision to buy sometime within the next week? If the answer is yes, good. So that tends to be business to consumer, make at least $100,000 of raw revenue, and the client's worth at least $1,000 a year. And then you think, well, what can I do to drive like 7 to 10 clients a month? What can I put together that's going to do that? And then that's your package. And so, because now you're saying, hey, I just added $100,000 to your business, because I'm doing like 7 to 10 clients, each one giving you $1,000 a year at least. And what if it's something bigger, like my CPA? Like I paid that guy like $6,000 last year. But I mean, he did a lot of, like he did bookkeeping, he did a personal filing, a business filing, and 4 kind of quarterly tax estimate meetings along the way. And it's just under $6,000. It's like, well, okay, well, what if you could get like 2 of me per month for that guy?
Right.
And just 2 clients. It's not a huge thing. It's just 2 clients. And then you think, okay, well, if you can put together a solution that will drive that kind of result, then charge $20,000 for it.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's great, Lee. Well, what a great way to end this, man. Great way to kind of encapsulate that. I really, really enjoyed this talk. I definitely don't think this will be the only time I have you on. We got all kinds of stuff we could talk about moving forward. So thanks so much, man, for your time and for sharing your expertise. And I'm already looking forward to the next one.
Awesome, Josh. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man. Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.